So I was browsing through the interwebs to find a new game to play, all while avoiding the newest copy pasta AAA title. That's when I saw the trailer for that hot new Devolver Digital game. No, not that one. The other one. Immediately, I was sold, as I find there is a criminally low amount of games where you have to be evil. Not pick a red or blue lane or morally gray areas, but full, unapologetic evil. With the recent release of Destroy All Humans Remastered and Carrion, I hope the industry realizes there is a market for games that focuses on playing villains. More importantly, in a way that doesn't justify your villainy. I don't need a game to always make me feel like I'm in ethics class. Sometimes, bad is just good.
It's so bad.
Carrion takes this approach and centers itself around an unknown marmalade monster who wreaks havoc. Basically, you get to finally live out the nightmare fuel that was the Intruder miniseries on Toonami all over again. And I thank Phobia Game Studio for the opportunity. If at this point, the premise and trailer has you hooked, I would stop this video and just go play the game. Do make sure to come back, but personally, the less you know, the better the experience will be. It's not that this game has huge mysteries, but I think a large part of the enjoyment of this game comes from discovering the different abilities and enemies. Okay, now that we have that spoiler warning out of the way, Carrion plays like a Metroidvania, but it does have a big difference. There is no map, which contextually makes sense, but I find myself looking for the map out of habit. Despite all this, I never found myself feeling lost, and I think a large part of that is due to how weirdly linear the game is, despite the Metroidvania design. It always felt like the game was pushing me forward in the right direction, while still having different paths and allowing for some backtracking. Another way the devs remedy the lack of a map and minimal HUD is the use of the environment. There are panels that tell you the completion status of the area you are in, as well as scrolling marquees that inform you of things happening. I love this use of environment to convey information because it serves the world building and is a gameplay tool for the player. The movement feels so good, and I think the devs deserve a huge gold medal for making traversal feel very seamless. Using a mouse, you simply click in the direction you want to go, and your Carnage doppelganger will just zip towards that direction. Game feel is further enhanced by the great pixel animation, and you assume the role of movie monster immediately. From the start, the game wastes very little of your time, and you guys know I am all about that. There is one exception, which we will get to, but the game has a very fast pace. It doesn't linger long on tutorial segments and respects the intelligence of the player to figure things out as you go along. That is not to say the game leaves you in the dark, but you have full control from the moment the game starts. Weirdly these days, that's an actual point of praise. Now, before this splat of jam gets too confident, there are two things that didn't land as well with me: combat and the human segments. Combat feels all over the place. At its highest points though, you get to set up some fun horror segments straight from every horror movie ever made. Whether it's the stealthy under your bed nab or just going into a room for a human buffet, this always feels very satisfying. And at the risk of sounding like a psychopath, the screams complement the action very nicely. When you have to fight things that fight back, however, it can quickly turn into a mess. If there are a lot of enemies, you can often find yourself misclicking objects in your attempt to wrangle some prey. Add the fact that you are very squishy, and this can lead to some unexpected deaths. Some upgrades down the line definitely help with your options to kill, but head-to-head combat never quite felt right. I imagine balancing feeling like a full horror monster and making the game challenging was a tough ordeal, but to its defense, there is a lot that feels right with combat. The upgrades cause your monster to grow, which in combat is a trade-off because the bigger you are, the easier it is to be hit. Also, the enemies that had the flame weapon easily felt like you were going up against Ripley herself. The other notable segment that I was not crazy about were the human segments. So you find these little areas you go into and assume control over a human. Logically, I do see how making a story segment interactive potentially makes it more interesting than a cutscene. But here it just feels like the game comes to a halt. You don't really do anything interesting as a human, so the interactions just feel tacked on. Also, if I could talk directly to the devs, I don't understand this fascination with adding a run and walk function. By default, the faster speed always seems to be the go-to, so unless you have a very precarious narrow segment to traverse that may need some serious slowing down, I just end up holding the run button the whole time. Like most things in this frustrating industry, it just feels like it's there because all the other games do it. But I digress. These Prince of Persia segments are very lackluster, especially when compared to the high octane monster fantasy segments. I know the ebb and flow of pacing is important, but I think these slower segments could have been refined a bit more in its gameplay. As for the story, well, it does the lower budget game thing where most of it is shrouded in mystery. The type of thing that lets Redditors lose sleep over and come with their own interpretation from the nuggets of information we get. To be honest, I like how little they gave you, and I was really hoping they avoided the whole folly of man trope. The only story point I needed was,
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
none of these flaws really outweigh the pros of this game, so if you haven't played it, I fully recommend this. I can look past some minor inconveniences for a product that's actually refreshing to play in a sea of uninspired copy-paste games. Even the playtime feels to the point, with a few concise hours rather than the long padded double-digit numbers we've gotten used to. This is a solid 8 out of 10, and if you're a dev making a game with ghosts in the title, please make it about actual ghosts.